Hey everyone, I'm Shawnta Jackson, and my purpose in life is to help people to help themselves and others. And welcome to today's show. Our topic is domestic violence. You are watching live on Facebook and on YouTube. Please do voice your comments and ask any questions in the chat box, and I'll be sure to answer those questions. And I actually have a few guests joining me today. I have Driscoll. She is located in Albany, New York, in New York State. And she is the surviving mother of Helen and surviving grandmother of Brittany. Helen and Brittany were murdered in November 2009 as a result of domestic violence. I also have joining me Elois Kelly. Elois Kelly is a domestic violence intervention specialist and life coach located in Silver Spring, Maryland. And then I have Alphonso Mayo. Mayo is a servant leader and a youth mentor, and he is the founder and executive director of Mentoring Mentors, a nonprofit organization in Baltimore City, Maryland. Domestic violence affects millions of Americans. It could be a current or former spouse or partner. It could be a one-time incident. It can happen several times. It could happen over the course of years. And today we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about understanding the signs of domestic violence behaviors, signs of abuse, how that can affect children, and then also we'll give any advice to victims and survivors. I'll take this time to bring my guests on. Hi, Dale. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Shawnta?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Let's bring everyone in one at a time. Hi, Mayo.
Hello.
Hey there, Elois. How are you?
How are you?
Good, good. Perfect. Thanks everyone for joining us. And we actually have our first comment from Javon Banks in Las Vegas, Nevada. He says, awesome awareness. Good job. Thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Dell, I think I would like to start with you. I am a survivor of domestic violence, and I talk a little bit about that in my book, The Journal of a Woman with Lived Experiences. And I share my personal story of resilience, and I believe that there is power in storytelling. And I would like to take this opportunity to give you the floor to tell your story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you that there is power in sharing. I lost my daughter, Helen, and my granddaughter, Brittany, in November of 2009. She had only been dating this man for less than 5 months. And when she broke it off with him, she didn't realize the dangers of the consequences of doing what she did. And ultimately, he killed her. And then when my granddaughter, we think of her as a hero, she tried to save her mom, and he killed her too. And since then, I've been fighting for legislation so that we can know who these people are before we bring them into our homes.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about that legislation. That's we know it today as Brittany's Law, but tell us the history about Brittany's Law and where you're at right now with that.
Yeah, I've been working on it for almost 11 years now. It hit the floor 2 months after this happened, and it passed the Senate 8 years straight. We ran into some complications, but now we're looking at a whole different approach with it and working with the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And hopefully we're making some good headway to get this bill passed. It won't be called, unfortunately, we can't call it Brittany's Law anymore because there is a Brittany's Law. Because, it's taken so long. But I don't want to go into too much detail until I get word from my senator and the writing of the bill. We have to all look at it and make sure that we're all aligned with it and agree with it. And once we do that, hopefully we'll just go. COVID has slowed us all down like everyone else. But I'm really hopeful that this will finally be the year that this gets passed.
And when you say that you're looking to, it made it to Senate and then to Assembly, but it didn't pass, you're talking about New York State.
Correct.
Okay.
It has to go through, well, I don't think it necessarily has to go through the Senate first. Mine did. It would pass the Senate, but then it would never get out of committee in the Assembly. It has to get out of the committee that it goes to. Mine was corrections because of the type of bill it is. And it never made it out of that committee to get to the floor for a vote. So it never even got a chance to get a vote. And then, of course, once it does that, then it goes to the governor. The governor signs it, and then that's when it becomes law.
And so what is it that you're looking to achieve?
Oh, to get this passed.
About the law, just in general, just for
give the ability to people to have a clear definition of what these violent felons have committed. In my daughter's case, this man had been in prison. He served 2.5 years out of a 5-year. I think it was a 5-year. Maybe it was only 3 years, but he only served 2.5 years. And he was listed, his crime was listed assault in the second. And who really knows what that means? Who knows what assault in the first is? It's not clear. You have no idea. And he told my daughter that he had gotten into a bar fight protecting a girl. And I've since found out so many people are using this excuse when they get out of prison, but we have no way of knowing. She looked him up right away. She looked him up there. She looked him up on the sex offender registry. She got as much information as she could. But we need more clarity. We need to know exactly what they did. We needed to see, okay, he harmed his child. He threw his infant baby into a wall, causing brain damage. And had she known this, there's no way she would have brought him into her home. And we need to know this. I mean, you could say you're out on a date for the first time. You could excuse yourself, go to the ladies' room, men's room, because it does apply to both. Look the person up. If they do have a violent felon status that, especially, something like this that's harmful to a child or domestic violence related crime, don't give out any information. Don't ever see that person again. But it gives you that chance. It's just one more tool to protect us from bringing these people into our homes, because my daughter never would have allowed that. She was her kids were her world. And not only that, she was just family oriented, period. And I believe that if we had had something like this then, that they'd probably still be alive today.
Thank you, Del. Thank you for telling your story. And I understand that grief is in phases, and that you're always, mourning your daughter and your granddaughter. And I thank you for having the courage to even just be here and to share the story and to advocate for women and children and just people in general for domestic violence. Even though, your efforts are in the state of New York, it's still a national effort. It's still a national cause. And
absolutely, yes. And I do hope to go that way as well with this, because I'm getting such good feedback right now.
Yes, thank you so much. And so my other guest, Alphonso, Elois, I'll ask you to kind of step in and share your expertise and any personal experiences. But Alphonso, the reason that I asked you to come on is because, one, you have a background in childhood development. and you are a youth leader, but then also because you are a male, and then you have your different lived experiences and your different life experiences. Could you please share just any background or anything that you want the audience to know about yourself and your experience with domestic violence, whether it be throughout your childhood or in your adulthood?
Sure. I hope you guys can hear me well. So again, Alphonso Mayo, servant leader of an organization here in Baltimore called Mentor Mentors, where essentially we teach youth ages 11 through 18 the importance of relationship building, empathy skills, and how to connect. So we talk about interpersonal skills, community-based, and how do we uplift one another. My line of work, we don't always talk about domestic violence, but we know that it's something that's prevalent within our community. If I have to just be completely honest, and I have to tell you the truth, like I am a perpetrator and I am a victim. And a lot of times people think that males can't be victims of domestic violence, especially because so someone that might play a sport like myself, or you have a certain physique, people believe that you can't experience exposed to domestic violence because a lot of times we associate domestic violence with physical abuse, and we eliminate verbal, emotional, psychological abuse. And as a perpetrator, I was younger. I had no clue that I was actually committing acts besides the physical act. But leading up to it, I didn't realize how emotionally abusive I was, how verbally abusive I was, because culturally it was something that was accepted, especially amongst athletes. And what I learned early on is that many men hide behind masculinity, right? And so a lot of people that I know personally, men that I know personally, there's like a place value. So I'm a man, I'm above a woman. Even that notion can lead to domestic violence because you believe that you're higher than someone with your separatism, which means that you look down upon them, and if they display certain behaviors, you might react in a way that's not conducive to showing love. And I've been in that space. And then as I matured and I realized like how harmful this is and how detrimental this was, not only to myself, but my future, to my kids, to the person that I was in a relationship with, I started to change that language. And then as I matriculated and learned different skills around fatherhood and relationship building, I realized that I was a victim as well, not just from my childhood and what I saw within my family, but within a toxic relationship from someone who I loved dearly and who I cared about. And while she might not have been physically abusive, the verbal and emotional abuse takes the same toll on you. You respond as if you're responding to any other stress, and it doesn't allow you to be your best self. It doesn't allow you to show the world who you are. And I felt myself doing a lot of covering for that particular relationship, and it doesn't even feel good to say now. But the truth is, it works both ways. And for my colleagues, my peers, my athletic friends, I know some of them are experiencing the same thing, but a lot of times when we speak up, the world doesn't hear men, especially Black men in that space, right? So if you say like, hey, I'm being abused, they look at your features, they look at your resting face, right? A lot of times we look like we can handle ourselves. But what I've tried my best to do and what I've tried my best to teach the youth that I serve is that relationships in general are about growth. And if the relationship is not about growth and someone is hindering you or impeding your process towards success, it's toxic. And toxicity can spill in so many different ways. And so that's pretty much like how I approach domestic violence. That's how I approach life lessons and lessons learned in my life.
Thank you so much for that. And Elois, for me, one thing that like really that just kind of popped in mind that Mayo said was about just culture, and it was kind of normal, right? So you don't know that what you're doing is not right because it's a cultural norm. And then Dale, I believe it was 2 days ago on October 1st, FTT Helping Others and Mixed Radio Station in Woodbridge, Virginia, Cynthia Hell, hello. She invited us to speak during her domestic violence rally. And one of the things that you said, Del, that resonated and that stuck with me, that just reminded me of it when Mayo said it. Little girls, when little kids are playing on the playground, and if someone hits you, what do we tell them?
Don't hit her back.
No, or the fact that it's normalized, he likes you, or he's just acting like that. He's just being mean to you because he likes you. Oh, he's just oh, that means he likes you. But we're not realizing what we're saying and what we're ingraining in these young children, right? So really quick, I have some questions for you, Elois, but I want to check in with our comments. We have Chris from DC, Chris Lomax, my cousin. She says to Dale, thanks for sharing. And she was agreeing with you, Mayo. And she says that verbal abuse could be one of the worst. And Christy McGee, she's in Monroe, Louisiana, my cousin. She says, what are the requirements for becoming a domestic violence intervention specialist? We'll get to that before we end. But Elois, you are a domestic violence intervention specialist. Based off of what you heard, what messages do you want to give to our audience right now?
Wow, there's so many. Just from our two speakers, so I'm very, very honored to be with to share this forum. The idea and the position that we do need to know more about the people that we're dating. I fully agree. Do a background check. Go on social media. That's really, really critical. And if we find these things out sooner, it can possibly reverse the situation because you want to be armed with information. And some of us see always the good in people, and we really like them. The person expressed interest in us. But when you see those signs, you do want to be very, very much aware of them. With regard to the cultural aspect of it, a lot of that is environmentally based as well, because if you grow up in an environment where that is your normal, to see people being hit, slapped, spat upon, cursed out, called out of their name, it becomes a generational thing. If unless you cut it off and you recognize or have someone to help you recognize that this may have been their normal, but it does not have to be your normal. And the conversation really needs to start with art on the playground, before the playground. There are behaviors that are unacceptable. And yes, I do remember, even when I was in elementary school, and there would be guys that would pick on girls, pull their hair, and all this kind of thing. And that was something that people would say, oh, he must really like you. He just doesn't know how to say it. When in actuality, it could be the seeds already planted in a young boy stating that this is how you engage with women. Because they may see it in their own home environment. And it's sad, but unfortunately, this is the life that some young men and young girls see. I've known women that have evolved into becoming abusers themselves. And for a man to be abused, because 1 in 3 men are abused, that's statistically what the numbers say. I tend to think personally that it's more than that, but men don't report abuse half as much as women do, because there's still that stigma when, man, what are you talking about? You let your woman beat on you, that sort of thing. But some men don't have that safe space where they can go to another man, another brother, and just pour it out and lay it before them, and then to lay it before them in confidence, and know that, you know, all your business, if you will, isn't going to be um, that all your business isn't going to be put out there. So that can be challenging as well. Um, but, you know, domestic violence is real, and it comes in many, many forms. And it is, as we all know, it isn't always about fist to the face, open hand to the body. Um, some people may, you know, engage in physical abuse, and they leave bruises strategically where no one is going to see them. So they may put you in the stomach, they may hit you, kick you in the shins, those sorts of things. The mental abuse, the verbal abuse, those would be long, long lasting scars.
Okay, so really quick, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second, Elois. You kind of went out a little bit, but you were saying that mental abuse can leave long lasting scars, and I definitely agree with you. Dell, I could have been your daughter. I could have been Helen, and I know with one individual, more than one situation where I could have been, that could have happened to me. And from my understanding, domestic violence, it happens in phases, and it's not, no one just says, hey, I'm going to treat you like this. And, you know, you're charmed, you fall in love. And then, as Elois was saying, there's different signs. I mean, there's different types of abuse. It's not always physical. There could be financial abuse, emotional abuse, control, and for me, and it also affects, it's usually, from my understanding, younger women. I believe it's between the ages of 19 to 24. I can't remember the stat, but younger women are more likely to experience intimate partner violence than older women. And this could be because of life experience and different things like that. That's why I think it's important for women to mentor other women around them and women in their family. I don't, even though I come from a loving family, I don't recall having like those woman to woman talks where I was kind of taught on, you know, about how to choose a partner, things to look for, control, bullying, different things like that. But the final stage of domestic violence, or sometimes the fatal stage. So the fatal stage would be the final stage, right? And that's usually when the woman decides to leave. And that abuse can continue, even if it's not physical. It could be, it depends on how, in your case, Helen was with him for 5 months. But in my case, I was married. And so even though I literally like just walked away and didn't pack clothes, I snuck out. That's how I left my relationship. And I have absolutely no regrets about that. I'm okay. I'm here. I have my teeth. Anything could have happened to me, and so I'm well aware of that. But Adele, for you, to your knowledge, were there any other signs during that 5-month period that Helen knew about or told others about?
Towards the end, we could see that she was finally starting to see what was going on, because he had alienated her from most of her friends, not her family. She never allowed that with her family, because she was so family oriented. But when myself or other family members came over to their house, he would disappear. Towards the end, he would make himself absent. So he knew that we were picking up on it. But at the end, she was making connection with her friends again. So we know from other ways as well. But she was finally starting to see, oh my God, he did more than what he said. My youngest granddaughter was only 2.5 at the time. And she later told me she had a long memory for quite a while. She couldn't say her R's, and she would say, "John Bound hit Helly. John Bound hit Helly." He was feeling safe around her because she was so little, and she was. I mean, he obviously was hitting her to some degree. I don't think a lot because we never saw anything, or else he did it where we couldn't see it. But I mean, Helen and I, we talked about so much. We're so close. But all he had been told by his parole officer the day before I was there. He had been told by the parole officer, he had made a deal with them that if he worked with them as an informant once he got off parole, that they would give him what they call a get out of jail free card, which meant he wasn't going back or getting arrested. And he just thought that was so funny. I'll never forget that day, him coming back and laughing about it. I just kind of lost my train of thought. But he, you know, so many times I've wished I had stayed just one more day, just one more day, just one more day. But it was that night. I left around 11 o'clock that morning because I had to go back to work in Oswego, which was about an hour away. And it was that night that he killed them. Thank God my grandson wasn't there. He had spent the night at a friend's, which was very unusual because it was a school night. Thank God we still have him.
Again, I'm sorry, Lois, I accidentally took you off camera. Again, thank you, Del, for sharing that. And thank you. Elois.
Yes.
In addition to some of the things that we already talked about, can you tell us about some of the signs of domestic abuse or intimate partner violence, or just like how it happens? And so talk to the person, to the potential victim, so that they can recognize the signs.
One of the first signs is that they care so much, they're so into you, and they want to know every single thing about you too soon. That can be a manipulative ploy, because then you can perceive it as caring, but it really is the beginning signs of someone being controlling. Okay, so that's really, really critical. You want to be aware of that. If they want to have access to your phone, if they show up unexpectedly at your office where you work, if they show up unexpectedly at your home, again, at your home, if they're always questioning you, I tried calling you, why didn't you call me back? You may think that it's cute and it's funny and, oh, he really likes me. Those are red flags. If he also speaks, you want to look at if he or she, you want to look at their relationship with their parents. If they have functional, broken, and if they're snapping at their parents or women in the family or men in the family, that's a sign. If they will speak that way to their relatives, they will definitely speak that way to you. Even if they speak negatively about their own children, that is also another sign. If they never find anything good in anyone else, it's everyone else's fault. One of the reasons why they're struggling is because it's this person's fault and that person's fault. Those are signs. And that's also a sign of a narcissistic person as well. Everything is everyone's fault. Everything that's ever gone wrong in their life is everyone's fault. So there's no accountability involved, okay? You also have to look at if they have a hairline trigger temper. If the slightest thing irritates them and they escalate quickly, but then will diffuse it and say, oh, well, I had a bad day. I was really stressed out. Now, granted, people, have bad days. But when your bad day becomes your MO, and your bad day is every day that I engage with you, those are all signs, all triggers, and they're red flags rather that you should be aware of. And if you have, that feeling, if there's something that just isn't sitting right, go with your feeling. I'm telling you, go with your feeling, because 9 times out of 10, you are correct.
True.
You are correct. If they talk to you even about past relationships, she didn't do this, he didn't do that, and they tear down the person that they were with. There was nothing redeeming about them, about that individual they were with. Those are signs. They're just blaring signs. Or even if you get into, a disagreement with them, and once they want to reconcile, the 5 gazillion roses, now all of a sudden, well, here, let me pay for a massage. Let me do this. Let me do that. That's part of a gaslighting and narcissistic behavior as well. So, and after a while, they become, and I hate to use this term, they become like serial career-oriented abusers. They've been doing it for so long, and they're so methodical with it, that it's like a job to them. It's like a game to them. They know they're the master manipulators until you expose them. And when you expose them, that's when you will really probably see that violent or that verbally abusive side to them. But again, if it does not sit well in your spirit, and your spirit is saying, follow your spirit, exit stage left. And don't be as people so willing or so thirsty, if you will, to be in a relationship that you divulge all of your personal business. You have to take it slow. You have to take it slow and discern what is going on with this person, because once you let them in your life, in your personal space, then it's going to be challenging to get them out. Barring, you have law enforcement, but don't give up too much information so quickly to them, and definitely know the signs. But looking at how they engage with family members is going to be really, really critical. Really, really critical. And find out what their perceptions are on the opposite sex. How do they view women?
Yeah.
How do they view women? How do they view men? All of those things are critical.
Alphonso, you seem really engaged. Thoughts?
Yeah. Because again, I believe that when you're on both sides, you start to realize, like, man, I displayed some of those signs, but then some of the signs was also displayed to me, and maybe I just didn't want to make myself keenly aware of what was happening, or I had some self-denial. And one of the things that keep resonating with me is even when you look at a person's background and their family makeup, like what are their family values and beliefs, right? Like, do they perpetuate it? Do they tell them, oh, well, you're a girl, it's okay to hit that person, or it's okay to yell, or you're a guy, you should be hitting that person, or don't, like, just those little things start to resonate with me. And I started to, and again, because you're always learning, right? Because relationships evolve all the time. And so none of us have all of the answers, but the answer, in my opinion, is, hey, if it's hindering any growth within me, then it's toxicity and you need to move forward. And another telltale sign is there's cycles to domestic violence, right? Like, there's like a honeymoon phase, like the makeup part where someone is always apologetic, or, they engage in like physical things, or they're really, really nice to you. But then they show face again, and then they just keep duplicating it. I know in my personal situation, this particular abuser made me feel like I was the abuser, no matter how much I tried to share. So they would say things like, oh, you're too emotional, or that's not real, or like they were always deflecting for their behaviors. And again, so that I'm not taking accountability for what I'm bringing was something that even as an adult, I struggled with. And then I think, especially working with young kids, it really is, they share so much information so soon, and you can find information so soon. That's why we try to talk to them about social media etiquette, right? You can look at a person and kind of see patterns of behaviors. So if you're slow to text back and they're constantly calling you, that's a telltale sign as well. Or if they want to choose your friends for you, right? Like, oh, you shouldn't hang with that person. That's kind of a telltale sign. Or if you're close with someone and that person always kind of give you sound advice and they make you feel like that person isn't a good person. And I also wanted to kind of speak to this because no one has mentioned it yet. Do not allow your religious leaders to keep you in a domestic violence situation. I recently had to move away from a church because, I thought it was a safe place. I would share things that was hurting me, and I had no way of protecting myself. And the solution was pray, right? And I do believe in prayer. I do believe in the word. I do believe these things, but that wasn't a sound solution to tell me to stay in something that could have took my life, or I could have defended myself. And I'm a guy, right? And we understand how that looks, especially in climates for Black males, right? If you defend yourself, you're not defending yourself. You're the aggressor, you're the abuser. And so for me, I felt like I was in this yearly uphill battle, but I was listening to, my religious leaders say, hey, don't quit, don't stop, don't. But after a while, I was like, hey, you're perpetuating the cycle of violence because you're not telling me what to really do for myself. And then I got to a point where I was just like, hey, enough is enough. I can't do it. And what I realized, it was a struggle because I had become so keen to that relationship. I had become so immersed in that relationship that I longed for it. But then I realized, like, hey, and for those who are going through the situation, the safety is around family and people that want to uplift you. Allow them to become your safety net. You have to cut off all forms of communication with that person, whether it's social media, whether it's texting, and so on and so forth, because again, you can fall back into that pattern thinking that it's love, right? We talked about early stages of learning about those relationships, and you can think like, this person really do love me, they're just struggling. And whenever people make excuses for their behaviors consistently and they don't take accountability or they don't seek help, it becomes a cycle. And so I want to uplift that. And again, we always say, hey, it's just women, right? But it's really not. It's really not. And if you're a guy that's in that cycle where your young lady or your wife or whomever, she's slapping you or taking your phone or taking possessions or manipulating you with even sex, you have to speak up, because if you don't, you'll end up in situations far worse than what you are today. And so I just want to keep people encouraged around that. So.
Thank you for that, and thank you everyone for just listening to you, Mayo, listening to you, Dale, and Lois, the advice that you just gave. I literally walked through from when I was 19 years old until now, with my experience, with my personal experience. Just the like you said, you're in love, the person charms you. It's for me, there's different forms of abuse, but as far as the physical, it happened for me before we got married, after we were married, when I was pregnant with our son, and even after that. But then I left a few times. Like I remember I parked my car and I didn't have a lot of money. So this is the money control. I had everything. I had all the gifts. It got to the point where I had designer handbags and jewelry. I didn't even go to the store to pick the stuff out for myself. It was, I would come home and it would be like on the bed. And so I'm not at the time not realizing it, but that's a form of control. These are nice gifts. And I could, it looks as if, everything is good from the outside looking in. Then now that I think about it, I was thinking, I had a guy friend that I would always hang out with, and then I had stopped hanging out with him, and he told me that I was institutionalized. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm institutionalized. This is before the physical incidents happened, and I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but I was feeling like it wasn't that bad. Like people say, like, why did you stay? It wasn't. I know some people may experience an episode weekly or daily. It was spaced out, but then there was other forms of abuse. But anyway, just kind of listening to you all. But one time I tried to leave, and I didn't have much money, but I always had. I've always maintained my credit. So people who are in situations now, for me, I had been thinking about leaving, but I was resourceful. So I know enough and it may seem like you don't have anyone, but sometimes we just have to ask for help. There are a lot of people. There's a neighbor, there's a friend, there's a family member. Even if you feel like you've isolated yourself or you're embarrassed, there's always someone willing to help you. But even just being kind of resourceful where you get a P.O. box or something like that. I literally parked my car in the public storage, and it was free for a month. I'll figure it out later how I'm going to pay it. I'm going to go park my car right here. And I believe my mom bought me a plane ticket to come home, but I went back. And then I left the city that we were in, and I went to Las Vegas, and then he came to Las Vegas, and we were living together. And then the last time, but there was no physical abuse then, because now I'm close by family. And so now by this time of me leaving, family members are starting to learn more, and I have male family members. And so he knows, so now it's just the verbal control, saying little things, but not anything physical, because I'm home, I'm in my safety net. I mean, you're in my city now. But that very last day, that last night we were together, I wasn't allowed to leave the house, and people, another thing that abusers do, they use children for leverage, or if you have pets or anything. And so I wouldn't leave my son. So that's why I ended up staying that night, but I slept in the bed with my shoes on. And the next day, I don't know where he went, but I snuck out of the house and I just left. And my life, ever since, I never looked back. And just like with you, Mayo, what you were saying about that situation or the advice that you were giving. However, the abuse, and we can close it out, Elois, but the abuse continues. Even though the relationship has ended, if you have children with someone, there's other ways that they still have these certain ways about themselves, right? Where they could still control you or try to, or do certain things. Elois, would you like to close out on that note with us?
I'm sorry, specifically, what did you say? Because you blanked out for a second.
No, I was saying, so with abuse, sometimes even though the relationship ends, if people have ties such as children or close social networks, sometimes that abuse can continue.
When you have children with your abuser, the reality is that you're connected. Okay, that's the reality. So for the sake of your child, and I'm speaking from my own personal experience, although my ex-husband was extremely abusive, I always wanted for him to have a healthy relationship with his father. They are at that point now. But you have to establish very clear set boundaries. And in instances of domestic violence, you have to have the court involved. All right. And that is going to be a serious segue and protection for you and for your children. And if it means they have to have supervised visitation and you have to meet them at McDonald's and drop them off, you do what you need to do in order to protect you and your children. That is very, very critical. And to also bear in mind, although you may resent what your abuser did, that is still the father or mother of your children. So we have to rise above it. You never trash your abuser to your child. I know many, many women, that kind of behavior, it's ricocheting back on them to this day, because that child will end up resenting you. All right. Children are far more intelligent than we give them credit for. And trust me when I tell you, they will figure it out. Now, when they ask you, depending on how old they are, and how they can process it, their level of maturity, you do want to, I would say, piecemeal the information to them. Please. You want to piecemeal that information to them, but at a level where they can digest it, okay? And where they can understand it, because that is really, really critical, because you do want them to have a healthy relationship with that parent. But you also want to make sure that you take the necessary steps to make sure that they are safe and that you are safe as well, because it can get sticky. That's the reality. It can get sticky. It really, really can. But make sure that you involve law enforcement, or if necessary, there may be a guardian ad litem that's going to be involved. Because if you're going through the court system, they will clearly let you know it's about what is in the best interest of that child. And barring abuser exhibiting violent behaviors toward that child, they're going to, insist that non-custodial parent have visitation rights. They're going to demand that, and make sure that you get your children into some sort of therapy. I think that that's critical. It's very, very important. It does not mean, and this is another thing, I think within the African American culture, that, if you go into therapy, that's some sort of taboo. It means that you're weak. No, it does not. It really, really does not. I spent years in therapy, and I'm telling you, it is truly, truly beneficial. When you start to see your children maybe exhibit some sort of behaviors, get them into therapy. Let them know the door is always open. If they don't feel comfortable talking to you, seek a clinician so that they can get the resources that they need. Make sure that they get the resources that they need so that they're successful.
Okay. And Dell, as far as therapy goes, have you yourself have you been to counseling or therapy, or your grandson?
I definitely have. My grandson did. I wished he had gone longer, but realistically, I mean, he's doing really well. He was only 15 and a half when this happened, and he found them. And things could have gone really bad for him. But he turned out really good. Never got into any trouble. Has held a job. He's been with the same girl now for, oh gosh, I think at least 6 years. And they have a little girl. Her middle name is Brittany, so they named her after Brittany. Oh, wait a minute. No, that's that's another family member. This one was named, Brittany's middle name was Dale, like named after me. So her middle name is Dale. So she was named after Brittany in that way. He's really done very well, and I hope it continues that way. I hope he blocked a lot of it out, and I hope that he didn't see as much as he could have seen. And I went there, and the place hadn't been cleaned up yet. So, I mean, I still had that in the back of my mind. Plus, they had to tell us what was done to them because it looked like it was going to trial. So, if that bothers me, I can only imagine what my grandson went through. And it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
I'm all for therapy.
yeah,
Yes.
yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dale, Mayo, Elois. Thank you for everyone that tuned in.
Mhm.
Mayo, Chris Lomax, she says that your youth need to hear this. So 12-year-olds and different ages.
They on. Just yeah. Some of them was making comments. One of them texted me and told me I look mean, but I'm processing this. Right? Like, this is a tough topic, and so, but I definitely appreciate being a part of it. So thank you.
Yes. And Belinda, my mom, she says this is a great topic. Panel awareness is key. And my friend Tia in Tennessee, she says, thank you all for this discussion. We really need to spread, we really need to spread awareness more. Yes. And thank you everyone. And Chris, again, she says that she's glad that she tuned in. This is a topic dear to her heart, and thanks for sharing and spreading the news. Again, everyone, I am Shawnta Jackson, and my purpose in life is to help people to help themselves and others. You can learn more about me at shawntajackson.com, and thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.